Thomas Hale woke before sunrise, just as he did every day on his quiet Arizona ranch. The light had not yet spread across the sky, but he was already awake, not because the work demanded it today, but because his heart would not let him rest. This day was different. This day, he was expecting someone who might change his life forever. For months, he had been exchanging letters with a woman who agreed to come to Arizona to marry him. He had never met her. But her letters were kind, gentle, and honest. They spoke of her hopes for a peaceful life, her wish to escape loneliness, and her desire to build a future with someone trustworthy. Thomas felt the same way. The ranch was wide and silent, and though he worked hard every day, the evenings felt empty. He wanted a partner, someone to talk to, someone to laugh with, someone to share his days, so he dressed carefully that morning. He chose a clean shirt, brushed the dust off his boots, and even combed his hair more than usual. He looked at his own reflection in the small mirror on the wall and felt a mixture of nervousness and hope. It had been a long time since he had felt excited like this. By the time the sun rose, he was already saddling his horse, preparing to ride to the stagecoach stop. He had a bouquet of wildflowers he had picked himself, their colors soft and pleasant. He hoped the woman would like them. He imagined her stepping off the coach, smiling shyly as she recognized him. He imagined her being grateful to see a friendly face waiting just for her. The thought made him smile. The ride to the small, dusty stop took nearly an hour. The road was mostly empty, the breeze warm, and the sound of the horse's hooves steady and calm. Thomas rehearsed what he might say when she arrived. Should he greet her with her name? Should he tell her he was glad she came? His thoughts played back and forth like a nervous tune. He knew he wasn't a smooth talker, but he wanted to make a kind impression. When he reached the stop, only two other people were there, an old man sitting on a crate and a young boy waiting for supplies. The stagecoach was due any minute. Thomas climbed off his horse, tied the reins to a post, and stood with the flowers in hand, his heart beating faster than usual. The road stretched far into the distance, empty for a long moment. Then, finally, a small cloud of dust appeared, followed by the sound of wheels rumbling and horses trotting. The stagecoach approached. Thomas took a deep breath. This was it, the moment he had been imagining for months. The stagecoach came to a stop, and the driver called out a greeting. A couple of passengers stepped down, a man traveling for business, and a woman visiting her sister. But the woman Thomas expected did not appear. He looked carefully at each passenger, waiting for someone who might look at him with recognition. No one did. He felt a pinch of confusion. The driver noticed his puzzled expression and nodded toward the inside of the coach. "One more passenger," the driver said. Thomas leaned forward as someone stepped down from the coach. But it wasn't the woman he had imagined, not even close. Instead, a young Apache woman appeared, dressed in simple clothing, carrying a woven satchel. Her dark hair was long, braided neatly, and her deep brown eyes were calm, steady, almost unreadable. She stood quietly for a moment, looking around as if she was searching for something or someone. Thomas stared, unsure what was happening. She didn't match the description of his bride at all. There must have been a mistake. She didn't look confused or lost. She carried herself with confidence, as if she knew exactly why she was there. Before he could speak, the woman walked toward him with slow, deliberate steps. When she stood before him, she looked directly into his eyes with a seriousness that caught him off guard. Her voice was soft but firm as she said, "It's not a mistake. I belong to you." The flowers nearly slipped from Thomas's hand. He blinked, stunned. I'm sorry," he stuttered, bewildered. "Ma'am, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I was expecting someone else." Her face did not change. "No mistake," she repeated, her words steady. "I came for you. I came for you." Thomas felt his heart race. But not with excitement now, it was pure confusion. He looked around, unsure what to do. The driver shrugged and climbed back into the coach, preparing to leave. The passengers who had been watching lost interest and walked away. Soon, it was just the two of them standing at the quiet stop. Thomas cleared his throat, trying to understand the situation. "You must be looking for someone else," he said gently. "I don't know your name." "I didn't send for you." The woman shook her head slightly. "My name is Nalin," she said. "And I know who you are." Thomas Hale. At the sound of his own name, Thomas stiffened. How did she know him? He had never met anyone from her tribe personally. His father had known some Apache families long ago, but that was years before. His father had passed away many seasons ago. "Who told you to come here?" Thomas asked carefully. "I came because it was time," she replied. "Because of a promise made many years ago. A promise that must be kept." Her words were calm, but they left Thomas even more confused. A promise? What did she mean? He searched his memory for anything his father might have said. Any story he might have heard about the Apache people. Or an agreement between families. Nothing came to mind. He didn't want to leave her standing alone in the heat, so he softened his voice and said, "Come, sit for a moment. Let's talk." Nalin nodded once, accepting the invitation. They walked to a shaded area near a small wooden bench. Thomas set the flowers aside, knowing they no longer fit the picture he had imagined. He looked at her again, noticing the calm strength in her posture. She did not look nervous, scared, or hesitant. She looked certain, as if she had prepared her whole life for this moment. Thomas didn't want to make her uncomfortable, but he also needed answers. "You said you belong to me," he said slowly, choosing his words with care. "But I don't understand what that means." She looked at him with a thoughtful expression. "In my language," she said, "the meaning is different. It is not about ownership. It is about trust, connection, a path that brings two people together." Thomas was silent. He still didn't fully understand, but he could tell she wasn't speaking lightly. He noticed her hands. They were steady, not trembling. She wasn't lost or confused. She had come with purpose. The sun rose higher, warming the dry air. Thomas felt a responsibility forming inside him. He couldn't send her away when she had come so far alone, and he couldn't leave her at the stagecoach stop with nowhere to go. But he also couldn't pretend he understood the situation. "Let me take you to the ranch," he finally said. "We can talk more there. You must be tired from your journey." For the first time, Nalin's expression softened slightly, almost like relief. She nodded. "Yes. Thank you." They walked to his horse, and Thomas helped her mount before climbing up behind her. As they began the ride toward his ranch, the desert landscape stretched around them, quiet, wide, and full of unspoken mysteries. Thomas's mind was filled with questions, but he stayed silent for now. He would ask them later, when she had rested and when he could think more clearly. All he knew for certain was that the woman he had expected had not arrived, but someone else had. Someone with her own story, her own reasons, and her own quiet confidence. Someone who said she belonged to him not by mistake, but by choice. And though Thomas did not yet understand what that meant, he felt the beginning of something. Something unexpected. Something strange. Something that might change everything. When Thomas and Nalin reached the ranch, the sun was already high in the sky. The heat warmed the wide-open land, and a gentle breeze carried the soft smell of dry grass. Thomas helped her step down from the horse, noticing again how calm she looked. She didn't seem overwhelmed or unsure, even though she was far from her home and standing on a ranch she had never seen before. Thomas opened the door of his small but tidy house. "Please, come in," he said politely. Nalin stepped inside, looking around with quiet curiosity. The house was simple: wooden walls, a table he had built himself, a small stove, and shelves filled with tools and old books. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and welcoming. She stood still for a moment, as if studying the space, then gave a small nod, as though she approved. "Sit here," Thomas said, pulling out a chair for her. "You must be hungry." Nalin sat down gracefully. She didn't ask for food, but Thomas could tell she needed something to eat. So he prepared a simple meal: fresh bread, beans, and water. He placed it before her, and she thanked him softly before eating. Her movements were gentle and respectful, and she never rushed. Thomas watched for a moment, then sat across from her. When she had eaten enough, he finally spoke. "Nalin, I want to understand. You said you came because of a promise. Can you tell me about it?" She set her hands on her lap and looked at him steadily. "The story begins long before I was born," she said. "My grandmother told it to me many times." Thomas leaned back, listening closely. Nalin continued, speaking slowly so her words were easy to understand. "Many seasons ago, there was trouble near our village. People were afraid. Families had to move. And my grandmother was a young girl at the time. During those days, your father helped my people. He shared water, food, and kindness when others did not. He protected lives without asking for anything in return." Thomas blinked in surprise. He remembered his father speaking of helping travelers and families who needed shelter. But he didn't know the details, or that his father had helped Apache families specifically. "My people do not forget kindness," Nalin went on. "My grandmother said a promise was made. She believed that one day, a woman from our family would go to the family of the man who helped them. Not as a gift, not as property, but as a bond, a sign of respect and connection." Thomas listened carefully. Her words were gentle, not demanding. She wasn't saying she had been forced to come. She wasn't claiming she owed him anything personally. She was explaining a tradition, one he had never heard of. "But why you?" he asked softly. She looked down briefly, as if choosing her words. "I grew up hearing the story more than anyone else. My grandmother believed I would understand what it meant. She believed I had a calm heart, and that I could bridge two worlds. When times became uncertain in my village, I felt it was time to fulfill the promise." Thomas felt a strange mix of emotions: confusion, respect, and a growing sense of responsibility. "But coming here, that must have been difficult." Nalin nodded. "Yes, but it was my choice, not forced. I came because I felt it was right." Quote, Thomas sighed and rubbed his forehead. "I still don't understand why you said you belong to me." She lifted her eyes. "In my language, it means something different. It means I trust you, that I have a path connected to yours. It does not mean ownership." Thomas felt relief. He didn't want anyone to feel owned or trapped. "I'm glad you explained that," he said sincerely. "Your words surprised me." "I know," she replied softly. "But I knew you would listen. I knew you would listen." Her confidence in him tugged at something warm inside his chest. She didn't look afraid, even though she had traveled far and entered a different world. Thomas admired the courage she carried in such a quiet, steady way. For a while, they sat in comfortable silence. Outside, the wind rustled through the grass, and the sound of distant birds filled the air. The peacefulness helped Thomas calm his racing thoughts. "I want you to feel safe here," he said gently. "But I also want you to know you're free to make your own decisions. You're not here as part of a debt." Nalin gave a small smile. "I know. I would not have come if I felt forced." Thomas nodded slowly. He wasn't sure what their future would look like. She had shown up with purpose, but not with demands. She carried a story, not expectations, and he wasn't sure what he was supposed to do next. But he knew he couldn't send her away, not after she had traveled so far with trust in her heart. Later that afternoon, Thomas showed her the ranch. Nalin followed him quietly, observing everything with thoughtful eyes. She admired the horses, touching one gently on its neck. The horse seemed to sense her calmness and leaned toward her, instead of shying away. Thomas found himself smiling at the sight. "You're good with animals," he said. "They understand feelings," she replied simply. They walked to the field, to the barn, and along the fence. Nalin asked questions about how things worked, how he fed the animals, how he fixed the fence, how he prepared the land. She listened carefully to every answer, showing genuine interest. At one point, she touched the wooden post with her fingers. "You work very hard," she said softly. Thomas gave a small laugh. "There's always work to do here. It never ends." She looked at him thoughtfully. Work is easier when shared. Her words made him pause. For years, he had done everything alone. He had grown used to the silence, the long days, the tired evenings. But now, standing beside someone who spoke with calm wisdom, he realized how lonely those years had been. As the sun began to lower, they returned to the house. Thomas prepared tea, and they sat quietly once again. The golden light filled the room, giving it a warm glow. "Will your family worry about you?" Thomas asked. "My grandmother knew I would go one day," Nolan said. "The others may not understand, but I trust they will see I am safe." "What if they want you back?" he asked gently. She looked at him calmly. "I came on my own path. I am not lost. They will accept my choice when they see I am peaceful." Thomas admired her strength. She didn't speak loudly or forcefully, yet her confidence was unmistakable. She was someone who knew her own heart well. As evening settled, Thomas showed her the small guest room. "You can stay here," he said. "It's not big, but it's yours." She nodded in gratitude. "Thank you." He paused at the door. "Nalan, I still don't know what this promise truly means for us. But I want to understand. And I want you to feel comfortable here." She met his eyes, her expression thoughtful and sincere. "Understanding takes time," she said softly. "I am not here to rush you. I am here to see where our paths lead." Thomas felt a warmth spread through him. He didn't know what would happen next, but he knew he wanted to learn more about her, her culture, the promise she carried, and why she felt connected to him. There was something special in her calmness, something honest in her presence. As he stepped away to let her rest, he felt the ranch somehow different, not louder or busier, but fuller. A quiet presence had entered his life, bringing questions, stories, and a sense of connection he hadn't expected. That night, as Thomas lay in his bed, he stared at the ceiling, thinking about her words, her confidence, and the strange promise from the past. He didn't yet know what her arrival truly meant, but he sensed it was the beginning of something important, something neither of them had planned, but both were meant to discover. The next few days passed quietly on the ranch, but the quiet did not mean nothing was happening. As Thomas and Nalan worked side by side, they slowly began to understand each other's ways. Their conversations were simple but meaningful. Sometimes, they talked about small things, weather, plants, or animals. Other times, they talked about deeper matters, like family, memories, or the feeling of belonging. Bit by bit, they were learning how to be comfortable in each other's presence. Still, even though the ranch felt peaceful, the outside world was beginning to notice something unusual. News travels fast in small places, and people talk even faster. Word spread that an Apache woman was living on Thomas Hale's ranch. Some people were simply curious. Others were confused, and a few did not understand the situation and created their own stories. One morning, Thomas rode into town to buy supplies. As he tied his horse near the store, he noticed people watching him more closely than usual. Two men near the well stopped talking the moment he walked past. A woman walking with her daughter whispered something under her breath. Thomas felt uncomfortable. Although no one said anything directly, he tried to brush it off, but a strange feeling settled in his chest. Inside the general store, Mr. Jacobs, the shopkeeper, gave him a polite nod, but even he seemed curious. "Morning, Thomas," he said. "Heard you've got company at the ranch." Thomas pretended not to notice the tone. "Yes," he replied calmly. "A woman named Nalan." Jacobs raised his eyebrows slightly. "Apache, isn't she?" Thomas nodded. "She came with a story. One connected to my father." The shopkeeper looked thoughtful for a moment. "Well, I hope things are all right," he said slowly, trying to sound neutral but not fully hiding his curiosity. "They're fine," Thomas answered firmly. Still, he knew the questions wouldn't end soon. He gathered his supplies and returned home, thinking about how quickly assumptions could grow when people did not know the truth. On the ranch, Nalin was tending to the garden. She looked up when he approached, sensing his thoughts even before he spoke. "You look troubled," she said softly. Thomas sighed. "People are curious." She nodded without surprise. "People fear what they do not understand." He studied her calm expression. She did not seem worried or angry. She just accepted it as something she had seen many times before. Her peace of mind made Thomas feel calmer, too. "We'll face it," he said, "together." For several days after that, the ranch returned to its usual rhythm. They repaired the fence, fed the animals, and cooked simple meals. Nalin continued to learn about ranch life, and Thomas continued to learn about the traditions she carried. How her people respected the land, how they valued stories passed down through generations, and how they believed every choice shaped the next part of one's path. But soon, the quiet days were interrupted. Late one afternoon, Thomas was chopping wood when he heard horses approaching. He looked up to see 3 neighboring ranchers riding toward him. Their expressions were serious, and he could tell instantly that they had not come just to say hello. Nalin was in the yard feeding the chickens. She looked toward them but did not step back or hide. She simply stood still, observing the situation calmly. The ranchers stopped in front of the house. The oldest one, Mr. Carter, spoke first. "Thomas, we need to talk." Thomas set down the axe and wiped his hands. "What's this about?" Carter glanced toward Nalin, then back to Thomas. "It's about her," he said plainly. "We heard she's living here." Thomas kept his voice steady. "She is. Her name is Nalin." The second rancher, younger and more anxious-looking, added quickly, "We're just concerned, Thomas. Nobody knows why she's here. Folks are saying things." Thomas felt a warm frustration stir inside him, but he stayed calm. "She's here because she came to fulfill a promise connected to my father. She's not causing trouble." Carter crossed his arms. "Well, trouble doesn't always come from actions. Sometimes it comes from misunderstandings. We don't want any confusion spreading." Nalin watched quietly, her eyes calm, her posture relaxed. She seemed to understand what was happening but did not step forward unless invited. Thomas realized this moment required clarity, not anger. "She's under my protection," he said. "She's peaceful. There's no reason to worry." The younger man looked uncomfortable. "We're not trying to argue. We're just nervous. This is unusual." "I know it's unusual," Thomas admitted, "but it's not dangerous." The ranchers exchanged glances. Finally, Carter said, "Just remember, Thomas, people in town are watching. They're not sure what to think yet." With that, the 3 men turned their horses and rode away. The tension in the air slowly faded as the sound of hooves softened in the distance. Thomas walked toward Nalin, who stood patiently. "I'm sorry," he said. "They don't understand." Nalin shook her head. "Understanding takes time," she said. "Fear comes easily. Meaning does not." Her words were gentle, but they carried wisdom. Thomas appreciated that she never responded with bitterness. She held a kind strength that soothed his frustration. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, they sat on the porch together. The sky was painted with colors, soft, orange and pink, blending into the blue. The peaceful setting made the earlier tension seem far away. "You handled everything calmly," Thomas said. Nalin replied. "Calm is the first step toward peace." He admired her ability to remain steady even when others misunderstood her. He wondered how many times she had faced such moments before. But the challenges were not over. 2 days later, as Thomas fixed the barn door, he heard another group approaching. This time, it was not the neighboring ranchers. It was 3 members of Nalin's tribe. They rode quietly, arriving with respectful posture and open expressions. Thomas stepped forward. Nalin appeared beside him, standing with quiet dignity. The tallest of the 3 visitors spoke with a gentle tone. "We came to see if Nalin is safe," she answered softly. "I am safe." The visitor looked relieved but continued. "Some believed you left without proper reason." Some worried that you might be in an unfamiliar place without support. Nalin shook her head calmly. I came by choice. My heart guided me. I am not lost. The visitors exchanged looks. They trusted her, but they also wanted assurance. Thomas stepped forward respectfully. She's welcome here, he said. She is not forced. She is free. The tallest visitor nodded slowly. Your words match hers. That is enough. They spoke for some time, peaceful, thoughtful conversation. The visitors explained that they had come to make sure she was comfortable, not to take her away. Nalin expressed her appreciation and explained her purpose again, speaking with clarity and confidence. When the visitors prepared to leave, one of them smiled gently. Your path is yours, he said to Nalin, and we will support your choice. Nalin nodded with gratitude. Thank you. As they rode away, Thomas felt a deep relief. He realized that both sides, the ranchers and Nalin's people, had come out of care, even if it had taken different forms. He appreciated that the visitors had asked respectfully and listened with open hearts. That evening, Thomas and Nalin sat again outside the house. The air was cool, and a soft glow filled the sky. You could have gone with them, Thomas said quietly. Yes, she replied. But I stayed. He looked at her thoughtfully. Why? Her answer was simple but powerful. Because my path is here. Something warm moved through Thomas's chest. He did not yet call it love, but he knew something important had formed between them. It wasn't forced. It wasn't rushed. It grew like a gentle flame, steady and warm. He realized then that he was no longer confused by her presence. Instead, he felt grateful for it. Though challenges had come from both sides, they had faced them with calm, patience, and honesty. And the bond between them had grown stronger because of it. The world outside might still be uncertain, but on the ranch, something steady and meaningful was taking shape, something neither of them had planned. But both were beginning to understand. In the last part of the story, life began to move in a new direction for him, but it did not happen suddenly. It was a slow and steady change that came after months of learning, thinking, and correcting himself. He now understood that every mistake he had made in the past had taught him something. Instead of feeling sad about them, he now saw them as lessons written by life itself. Still, the journey was not easy. Every day brought new challenges, and every moment tested his patience, courage, and belief in himself. After everything he had gone through, he decided that he would rebuild his life with honesty and hard work. He promised himself that he would make a future that he could be proud of. A future that would not only bring him peace but also inspire anyone who heard his story. He wanted to become a person people could trust. Someone whose presence brought comfort instead of fear. Someone whose words carried respect instead of regret. At the start, he struggled a lot. People still judged him based on his past. Even when he tried to do good, some people did not trust his intentions. They whispered behind his back. They questioned his choices. And sometimes they simply avoided him. He understood that he could not change everyone's opinion at once. All he could do was continue doing the right thing. He had already seen what losing patience could do, so he decided he would not let negativity control him again. He began helping people around him in small ways. If someone needed help carrying something heavy, he helped. If someone was confused about something, he guided them. If someone was sad, he offered kind words. Slowly, people started noticing this new side of him. Some were surprised, some were confused, but all of them saw that he meant well. He did not force anyone to like him. He simply worked silently, hoping that his actions would speak for him. During this time, he also started working on his dreams. There had been moments in the past when he wanted to give up, when he felt like maybe dreams were not meant for him, but now, he understood that dreams only become impossible when a person stops trying. With this thought, he began learning new skills, watching tutorials, reading books, and practicing every day. He learned that success is not a one-day event. It is the result of countless small efforts that people usually do not notice. As days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months, he saw visible progress in his life. His confidence returned, stronger than before. Instead of running from difficulties, he now faced them calmly. Instead of reacting quickly, he now took time to think. He understood that calmness is not weakness, it is strength of the highest level. Whenever he felt frustrated, he reminded himself of everything he had survived. If he could come through all that, he believed he could handle anything ahead. During this time, he also met a few people who supported his growth. They appreciated his efforts and encouraged him to continue improving. Their support gave him hope, something he had long missed in his life. He realized how important it is to have even one person who believes in you. Their belief can light up the darkest days. He promised himself that he would become this kind of support for others too. One evening, while sitting alone and thinking about his journey, he realized something important. Life had changed him, but he had also changed life. By not giving up, by choosing to grow, by choosing peace, he had rewritten the path fate had handed him. This thought filled his heart with pride. Not arrogance, but the kind of pride that comes with surviving storms and still choosing kindness. From that day, he made a new rule for himself. Whenever life gave him a reason to complain, he would instead find a reason to be grateful. Whenever life made him wait, he would use that time to prepare. Whenever life tested him, he would remind himself that diamonds are made under pressure. This mindset shifted everything. Problems still came, but he no longer felt defeated. He faced them like a soldier of hope. As his personal life improved, opportunities also started opening for him professionally. People noticed his dedication and offered him small tasks. He completed each task with full effort, even when it felt tiring. He believed that if he could not handle small responsibilities, he would not be trusted with big ones. Slowly, more work came his way, and he handled it with discipline. There were still days when he felt lonely or uncertain, but those moments no longer scared him. He had learned that loneliness is not completely bad. It is a chance to understand yourself deeply. And understanding yourself is one of the most powerful things a person can do. As he continued to grow, he also learned the importance of forgiving himself. In the past, he often blamed himself for everything, even for mistakes that were not fully his fault. But now he knew that self-forgiveness is not about forgetting the past. It is about accepting it and choosing to move forward. It is about respecting your own growth. One morning, while walking outside, he looked up at the sky and felt a strange but peaceful feeling. It was the feeling of freedom. Freedom from old fears. Freedom from old mistakes. Freedom from old pain. He realized that life was offering him a new beginning. And this time, he was ready to accept it with open arms. People around him began to change their opinions too. When they saw him working hard, staying calm, helping others, and keeping a positive attitude, they started respecting him again. Some even apologized for misjudging him in the past. He did not hold any bitterness. Instead, he smiled and said, "It's okay. Everyone learns in their own time." As months passed, he reached a point where his life looked nothing like the broken and confused days he once lived. He had built a new identity, one made of patience, wisdom, and sincerity. He did not brag about his progress. He simply lived in a way that showed growth, and this made others admire him even more. Then came the day when he finally achieved one of his biggest dreams. It was a moment he had imagined many times. But now that it was real, he felt emotional. He remembered all the nights he spent worrying, all the days he felt like giving up, all the moments he thought he was not strong enough. Yet here he was, standing at the top of a mountain he once believed he could never climb. He closed his eyes for a moment and whispered a quiet thank you to himself, to life, and to the journey that shaped him. He knew this was not the end. It was just the beginning of many more achievements, many more dreams, and many more chapters. His story became a silent inspiration for people around him. They saw how a person can rise after failing, how a person can transform after breaking, how a person can glow after going through dark times. They saw that real strength is not about being perfect. It is about being honest, being kind, being patient, and most importantly, not giving up, even when the world feels heavy. In the end, he learned the biggest lesson of his life. A person's past does not decide their future. It is their choices, their attitude, and their courage that shape their destiny. And with this belief, he continued walking forward, ready for new adventures, ready for new challenges, and ready to write a future brighter than anything he had ever imagined.